Crit comes from a Greek verb that means to judge or to decide. So a film critic judges a movie and tells us what's good or bad about it. Her critical opinion may convince us not to go, or we may overlook any negative criticism and see it anyway. Criterion: a standard by which a judgment or decision is made. He's one of those readers whose main criterion for liking a book is whether it confirms his prejudices. One person's principal criterion for a new car may be its gas mileage, while someone else's may be whether it has room for 4 children. When filling a job opening, employers usually look for several criteria, notice the plural form, in the applicants, and when college admissions officers are reading student applications, they likewise always keep a few basic criteria in mind. And when interviewing an applicant, one criterion for both the employer and the admissions officer might include the size of the applicant's vocabulary. Critique: a judgment or evaluation, especially a rating or discussion of merits and faults. Whenever he reads his latest story in the fiction writing seminar, one of the other students always delivers a nasty critique. Even though criticize means to judge something negatively, a critique can be completely positive or completely negative. Usually it's somewhere in between. When a paper of yours receives a critique from a teacher, you should read it carefully, and then reread it. Getting mad or offended is the worst way to react. Critique is often a verb as well. Thus, writers and artists often form groups solely to critique each other's work, and scientific articles frequently get critiqued in letters to the editor in the following issue of the journal. Hypercritical: overly critical. Most teachers do their best to correct their students' mistakes without seeming hypercritical. The important prefix hyper means excessive or beyond, see hyper, so hypercritical means basically too fussy. In TV and film comedies, the mother-in-law is just about always hypercritical, since the person her child married is never good enough for her. But other parents, spouses, and even children can be just as bad, so we should all be careful. If your father asks what you think of his new experimental meatloaf and you say it needs a pinch of oregano, you're being constructive. If you say he should cut down on the sawdust next time, you're probably being hypercritical. Hematocrit: the ratio of the volume of red blood cells to whole blood. The latest blood test had revealed that her hematocrit had risen considerably and was almost back to normal. Our blood is mostly made up of 4 components: plasma, red blood cells, white blood cells, and colorless blood cells called platelets. An instrument called a hematocrit, because it judges the blood, is used to separate a sample of blood into its components. The normal hematocrit for men is about 48%, for women about 38%. An abnormal proportion of red blood cells, either too many or too few, is a good early indicator of many diseases. So when you give blood as part of a physical exam, your hematocrit is one of the findings your doctor will often check. Jur comes from the Latin verb jurare, to swear, take an oath, and the noun jus, right or law. A jury, made up of jurors, makes judgments based on the law. And a personal injury was originally something done to you that a court would find unjust. Jurisprudence: 1. A system of law. 2. The study and philosophy of law. As a young lawyer, his heroes were the crusaders of 20th century jurisprudence, especially Louis Brandeis and Thurgood Marshall. Jurisprudence as a study may have begun in the Roman Empire, where schools of law were first established. And Roman jurisprudence, like so many other things the Romans created, served as the model in later centuries throughout the Western world. And like many other legal words, jurisprudence is used only in formal writing. Abjure, to reject formally. The Spanish Inquisition forced many Jews to abjure their religion and adopt Christianity or be burned at the stake. From its Latin roots, abjure would mean literally to swear away. Thus, after the holidays, many people abjure all sweets and fattening foods, often making their vow in front of friends or relatives. Abjure is often confused with adjure, which means to command solemnly, as if under oath. Thus, a judge might adjure a criminal to change his ways, but it's up to the criminal to abjure a life of crime. Perjury, the crime of telling a lie under oath. Found guilty of perjury for lying under oath in front of a congressional committee, he was sentenced to 2 years in prison. The prefix per in Latin often meant harmfully. So witnesses who perjure themselves do harm to the truth by knowingly telling a lie. Not all lying is perjury, only lying under oath, so perjury generally takes place either in court or before a legislative body such as Congress. To avoid committing perjury, a witness or defendant may take the fifth, that is, refuse to answer a question because the answer might be an admission of guilt, and the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution forbids forcing a citizen to admit to being guilty of a crime.